I'm Chloe, 29 female. I live in a moderately sized city where the cost of living seems to climb higher every single month. For the last 7 years, since graduating from college, I've worked as a financial analyst, a job that I'm good at and which pays me well. Despite that, I still lived at home with my parents, a decision that was, in theory, meant to be a strategic financial move for my future. For years, I told myself that paying my parents a substantial amount in rent was the responsible thing to do. It was helping them out and allowing me to save, or so I thought. But my life was a quiet balancing act, one where I was the reliable, income-generating daughter, while my younger sister, Bella, was the perpetually praised, cost-generating one. This is the story of how I discovered that my role in the family was daughter, but unwitting financier, and how I used the very skills they took for granted to orchestrate an escape they never saw coming, culminating in me buying my own house, in cash, without them ever knowing. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Life in my parents' house operated on a set of unwritten, yet rigidly enforced, rules. Rule number 1, Chloe is responsible. Rule number 2, Bella is special. Rule number 3, never question rules 1 and 2. At 29, I had become an expert at navigating this environment. I paid my parents $1,500 a month in rent for the privilege of living in my childhood bedroom. The room still had faded glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling from when I was 10, a silent testament to how little had changed. My dad, Mark, always justified it with his favorite line, "It's the real world, Chloe, nothing's free." And my mom, Susan, would nod in agreement, adding, "We're teaching you financial discipline. You'll thank us one day." I wanted to believe them. As a financial analyst, discipline was my entire career. I understood budgets, savings, and contributing to household expenses. The amount seemed steep for a room in a house they owned outright, but I reasoned that it must be helping them with the mortgage, utilities, and property taxes. It felt like the right thing to do. The problem wasn't the paying. It was the blatant, glaring hypocrisy that came in the form of my sister, Isabella. Bella, at 22, was the family's golden child. She was in her final year at a prestigious university, studying something artistic and expensive. She also lived at home, in a larger bedroom that Mom had redecorated for her just last year. Bella paid nothing. Not a cent for rent, not for her car insurance, which I knew my dad covered, and certainly not for her groceries, which she consumed with an impressive appetite. Whenever I gently broached the subject, the defenses would go up instantly. "Bella's a full-time student, Chloe," Mom would say, her tone laced with a gentle disappointment, as if I were being cruel for even asking. "She has to focus on her studies. You have a career." Dad would chime in with, "Her education is her priority. We can't burden her with bills right now." The word burden was what always got me. My contributions were considered my duty, while the mere suggestion of Bella contributing was a burden. The disparity was a constant, low-level hum of resentment in the background of my life. It manifested in small, everyday things. One evening, I came home from a grueling 10-hour day at the office to find Bella showing off a brand-new, top-of-the-line laptop. "Daddy said my old one was too slow for my design projects," she announced, beaming. I looked at my own 5-year-old laptop, the one I used for both my job and personal projects, and felt a familiar sting. I had been saving for a new one, but a surprise car repair had set me back. My parents watched Bella, their faces glowing with pride. "Whatever you need to succeed, sweetie," Dad said, ruffling her hair. Later that week, I mentioned that my car's tires were getting dangerously bald. My dad's response was a gruff, "Well, you better start shopping around for a sale. That's a pricey fix." The double standard was so obvious it was almost comical. My best friend Liam was the only person I could talk to about it. We'd grab coffee every few weeks, and he was my sounding board. "I don't get it, Chloe," he said, shaking his head after I told him about the laptop incident. "It's not just that they're helping her, it's that they're actively holding you back while they do it. $1,500 a month, you could be renting a beautiful one-bedroom apartment for that with your own space and your own rules." I know, I'd sigh, stirring my latte. But I'm also saving a lot of money, or I'm supposed to be. Without rent, I'd have my own place by now. Would you, though? Liam challenged, his gaze direct. Think about it, every time you get ahead, something comes up. Last year, it was the special property tax assessment they needed help with. 6 months before that, it was the emergency plumbing repair. Have you ever seen a receipt for any of these things? He had a point. I never had. I always just transferred the money, trusting them. My desire to be a good, supportive daughter was at war with the analytical part of my brain that screamed about red flags. The tension in the house was palpable. Bella would swan in and out, treating the place like a hotel. She'd leave dishes in the sink, knowing Mom would clean them. She'd borrow my clothes without asking, often returning them stained or not at all. If I complained, I was the one being petty. For heaven's sake, Chloe, it's just a sweater, Mom would say, exasperated. Be generous with your sister. But it was never just a sweater. It was my money, my possessions, my efforts, all treated as a communal resource for the family's convenience, while Bella's life was sacrosanct. The family dynamic was that of a small business where I was the sole investor and everyone else was a salaried employee with a fantastic benefits package. I was the cash cow, milked on a regular schedule to keep the farm running, while the golden child got to graze freely in the greenest pastures. I just hadn't realized yet that the farm wasn't the family home, it was Bella's lifestyle. The breaking point was coming, a slow-building wave of frustration that was about to crash. And it would all start with a simple, deceptive conversation about a down payment. The dream of owning my own home was the primary reason I endured living in my parents' house. It was the light at the end of the tunnel, the mantra I repeated to myself every time Bella left a wet towel on the bathroom floor or my mom reminded me that my portion of the electricity bill was due. I had spreadsheets, savings goals, and a specific account where every spare dollar was funneled. By my calculations, if I continued my aggressive saving, I'd have enough for a 20% down payment on a modest condo within 2 years. One evening in late spring, I made the mistake of sharing my progress with my parents. We were in the living room, a rare moment of quiet. Bella was out with friends, and I was feeling optimistic. I just hit a major savings milestone, I announced, a genuine smile on my face. I'm officially halfway to my down payment goal. My mom, Susan, looked up from her magazine, her expression a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite read. Oh, that's wonderful, dear. Dad lowered his newspaper. Halfway, huh? That's a lot of money to just have sitting in a regular savings account, Chloe. You're probably earning next to nothing in interest. As a financial analyst, I knew this better than anyone. It's in a high-yield savings account, Dad. The rate is pretty good, actually. He waved his hand dismissively. Good for a bank, maybe. Listen, your mother and I were just talking. We have an investment account that gets a much better return. It's low risk. Why don't you let us hold on to that money for you? We can put it in our account and it will grow much faster. When you're ready to buy, it'll be there for you, plus a nice little bonus from the interest. The offer hung in the air. On the surface, it sounded like a kind, fatherly gesture. But every instinct in my body screamed no. The analytical part of my brain, the part that Liam was always encouraging me to listen to, started firing off warning signals. There were no specifics, no mention of the fund's name, no talk of risk profiles. It was just a vague, trust us proposition. I appreciate the offer, Dad, but I'm comfortable with my current strategy, I said politely. I like having direct control over my savings. My mom set her magazine down, her face taking on that familiar look of gentle disappointment. Chloe, your father is just trying to help you. We've been managing our money for over 30 years. I think we know a thing or two. It's what family does. We help each other. The guilt trip was subtle but effective. I felt a pang of shame for my immediate mistrust. Maybe I was being too cynical. Maybe they really were just trying to help me reach my goal faster. For the next few weeks, they dropped the subject, but a new narrative began to form in the house. It was the story of the leaky roof. It started with my dad muttering about water stains in the attic. Then came the dire pronouncements after a heavy rainstorm. I'm telling you, Susan, we've got a major problem up there, he'd say, loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. This isn't going to be a simple patch job. We're going to need a whole new roof. I saw the estimate. It's going to be thousands. I don't know where we're going to get that kind of money right now." The timing was impeccable. The conversations were always held in my presence, their worried glances making it clear who they hoped was listening. Bella, of course, was oblivious. She was busy planning a summer trip to Europe with her friends, talking endlessly about hostels in Barcelona and museums in Paris. Her financial concerns extended only to her spending money. The pressure mounted. One night, my mom approached me, her eyes looking tired and worried. "Chloe, honey, your father and I are at our wits' end. The roofing company needs a deposit to even start the work, and with Bella's final tuition payment due, we're stretched so thin." She wrung her hands. "I hate to even ask this, but could we possibly borrow some money from your house fund, just until we get our tax refund back? We'll pay you back every single penny, I promise, with interest even." This was the moment. Every alarm bell in my head was ringing. Liam's voice echoed in my mind. "Have you ever seen a receipt?" I should have said no. I should have asked to see the roofer's estimate. I should have offered to pay the company directly. But I was looking at my mother's anxious face, and the years of conditioning to be the responsible one kicked in. I was the one with the career, the savings, the stability. They were my parents. How could I say no to them in a crisis? "How much do you need?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. $5,000 would cover the deposit," she said, relief flooding her face. "It would be a lifesaver, Chloe." Against my better judgment, I logged into my bank account and transferred the money. It was a huge chunk of my hard-earned savings, nearly a quarter of my down payment fund. As I hit confirm, a sick feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. They promised it was a short-term loan, a temporary measure until their tax refund arrived in a few months. But the roofer never showed up. Weeks went by. The sun shone, the weather was beautiful, and there was no sign of any work being done on our supposedly leaky roof. When I asked my dad about it, he was evasive. "Oh, the guy had a family emergency. He had to push us back a few weeks," he said, not looking me in the eye. A month later, the story changed. Turns out his initial quote was too low. He's trying to source cheaper materials. It's a whole thing. The excuses were flimsy and grew more elaborate each time I inquired. Meanwhile, my parents seemed less stressed than ever. In fact, they seemed thrilled when Bella triumphantly announced that her entire summer trip to Europe was officially booked and paid for. It was a 6-week excursion, complete with train passes, tour packages, and everything else a student could dream of. I overheard my mom on the phone with my aunt boasting. "Yes, she's so excited. Mark and I wanted to make sure she had a truly special graduation trip before she has to enter the real world. It's our gift to her." My blood ran cold. A gift. A very, very expensive gift. And I had a sickening suspicion that I knew exactly who had paid for it. The leaky roof, the worried faces, the desperate plea for a loan, it was all a lie. It was a down payment deception, but the down payment wasn't for a house. It was for Bella's European vacation. The sick feeling in my stomach didn't go away. It coiled there, a constant reminder of my own foolishness. The $5,000 I had loaned my parents felt like a void in my savings account, but it was the betrayal that truly hollowed me out. The story of the leaky roof had completely evaporated, replaced by a constant stream of updates about Bella's upcoming trip. My mom would show me pictures of hotels she was looking at in Rome, while my dad would talk about the travel insurance he'd purchased for her. They were so brazen, so completely unconcerned that I might connect the dots. Their assumption of my naivety was almost as insulting as the theft itself. I became an observer in my own home, quiet and watchful. I needed proof. My analytical mind, the one I used to dissect financial statements and find discrepancies at work, kicked into overdrive. A hunch was one thing, but I needed cold, hard facts before I could even begin to process what to do next. The opportunity came on a Saturday afternoon. My parents and Bella had gone out for the day to a street festival, a rare occasion where the house was completely empty. I knew my dad kept important documents in the small desk in their bedroom, a place I had always been taught to respect as their private space. But respect had become a one-way street in this house, and I was done playing by the rules. My heart pounded as I entered their room. I felt like a criminal, but a stronger sense of purpose pushed me forward. I opened the top drawer of the desk, sifting through old bills and bank statements. Tucked at the very back, underneath a stack of car titles and insurance policies, was a simple, spiral-bound notebook. It was a cheap ledger book, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. The cover was blank. I hesitated for a moment, then opened it. The first page was titled in my mother's neat handwriting, Household Contributions Chloe. My breath caught in my throat. I flipped through the pages. For 7 years, every single one of my $1,500 rent payments was meticulously recorded. Each month, an entry, the date, the amount, and a running total. It was all there, a perfect record of my financial contributions. But it was the other side of the ledger that made my world tilt on its axis. On the right-hand page, under the column header Expenses, was not a list of mortgage payments, utility bills, or grocery receipts. It was a detailed accounting of Bella's life. Bella fall semester tuition, $8,000. Bella sorority dues, $1,200. Bella car down payment, $3,500. Bella monthly car insurance, $250. Bella new laptop, $2,200. On and on it went, page after page. Every luxury, every expense I had ever questioned was laid out in black and white. My rent money wasn't just subsidizing Bella's free ride at home. It was the primary source of funding for her entire adult life. My contributions weren't for the household at all. They were being funneled directly into an account I mentally dubbed the Bella Fund. I felt dizzy and had to sit on the edge of their bed. I flipped to the most recent pages. There it was. An entry from 2 months ago, right after I had transferred them the money for the roof. It didn't say roofing deposit. It said, Chloe loan Europe trip, $5,000. Beside it, a corresponding expense entry, Bella summer tour package, $4,850. They hadn't even bothered to hide it. This ledger was their private record, a testament to their long-term, calculated plan to use me to finance my sister. The years of feeling like something was off, the constant sense of unfairness, the gaslighting, it all coalesced into a single, painful truth. I wasn't their daughter in the same way Bella was. I was their asset. I was a reliable stream of income, a human ATM that allowed them to give Bella the life they believed she deserved, a life free of the financial responsibilities they had so diligently taught me. The sound of their car pulling into the driveway jolted me back to reality. I quickly snapped a photo of several pages of the ledger with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to take a few attempts to get a clear shot. I slipped the notebook back exactly where I found it and hurried out of their room, my mind reeling. When they walked in the door, laughing about something they'd seen at the festival, I could barely look at them. My mother held up a small bag. "We brought you back a funnel cake, honey. You were working so hard on your laptop we didn't want to disturb you." The casual kindness, the facade of a normal, loving family was nauseating. I forced a smile and thanked them, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. I took the funnel cake to my room and threw it in the trash. The sweetness of it felt like a mockery. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, staring at the faded glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, the same stars that had been there since I was a child. They used to represent a galaxy of dreams and possibilities. Now, they just looked like a map of a cage I had unknowingly helped build around myself. The hurt was immense, a deep, crushing weight in my chest. But as the hours ticked by, the hurt began to crystallize into something else. It was cold, hard, and sharp. It was anger. And beneath the anger was a flicker of something new, resolve. They had played a long game, using my love and sense of duty against me. They thought I was their compliant cash cow. They had no idea they had been funding the education of a financial analyst who was about to conduct the most important audit of her life. The discovery of the ledger changed everything. The emotional fog of hurt and confusion began to clear, replaced by the cold, sharp clarity of a problem to be solved. My parents and sister were no longer just family who made questionable choices. They were subjects of an investigation. For the next month, I channeled all my energy into gathering undeniable proof, operating with a quiet, methodical precision that I usually reserved for my most complex clients at work. My parents' ignorance of my true feelings was my greatest asset. They saw my quietness as stress from work, my late nights in my room as dedication to my career. They had no idea I was poring over digital evidence, building a case against them brick by brick. My first step was to corroborate the ledger. The photos I had taken were damning, but I wanted more. My parents used the same local credit union I did, and we were all on a family plan, which, years ago, had given me minor access to view account summaries online to help them with budgeting. They were not tech-savvy and had likely forgotten this arrangement existed. I logged into my own account and navigated to the shared access portal. While I couldn't see detailed transaction histories, I could see account balances and RSN. Large transfers between their accounts. I created a new spreadsheet, far more complex than their simple paper ledger. In one column, I listed every rent payment I had ever made to them, a staggering total that made my stomach churn. In another, I input the data from the ledger photos. Then, I started cross-referencing. I found a large transfer from their main checking account to Bella's account on the exact day her tuition was due. I saw a significant credit card payment made just after they'd bought her the expensive laptop. And then I found the smoking gun for the Europe trip. 2 days after my $5,000 loan landed in their account, there was a transfer of exactly $5,000 out of their account. A few days later, I saw a charge on their credit card statement summary from a popular international tour company. The pieces were not just fitting together, they were forming a crystal-clear picture of systematic financial exploitation. The next phase of my investigation was Bella's social media. For years, I had scrolled past her posts with a mixture of annoyance and envy. Her feed was a curated highlight reel of brunches, shopping sprees, and weekend getaways. Now I looked at it with the detached eye of an auditor. I went back years, screenshotting everything. A post from 2 years ago showed her on a ski trip with friends. "Best spring break ever. So grateful my parents could make this happen," she'd captioned it. I checked my spreadsheet. Sure enough, just a week before that trip, there was a ledger entry, Bella's ski trip lift tickets, $1,500. The exact amount of my monthly rent. A picture of her and a boyfriend at a fancy restaurant for her anniversary corresponded with a ledger entry for Bella anniversary dinner, $300. It was all there. I wasn't just paying her tuition and car insurance. My money was funding her social life, her vacations, her clothes, her dinners. I was paying for the life my parents wanted her to have, the one they proudly showed off to friends and family, while I worked 60-hour weeks and ate leftovers to maximize my savings. Every Instagram post was a receipt for my stolen money. I confided in Liam, showing him the spreadsheet and the screenshots over lunch one day. He listened intently, his expression growing darker with each piece of evidence I presented. When I was done, he just shook his head slowly. "Chloe, this is worse than I ever imagined. This isn't just unfair, it's a calculated, long-term deception. What they've done is disgusting." "I know," I said, my voice flat. "Seeing it all laid out like this, it's like I've been living in a different reality." I thought I was contributing to the family. They were using me like a line of credit with no limit. "So, what's your next move?" he asked gently. "Are you going to confront them?" I thought about it for a moment. I imagined the scene, the shouting, the denials, my mother's tears, my father's defensive anger. They would call me ungrateful. They would twist my evidence and gaslight me until I doubted my own sanity. They would never admit fault. Confrontation would give them a chance to control the narrative, to play the victims. "No," I said finally, a steely resolve hardening in my voice. "No, a confrontation is what they expect. It gives them power. I'm not going to give them the satisfaction. They taught me about financial discipline, right? Well, I'm about to give them the lesson of a lifetime." Liam leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" A small, cold smile touched my lips for the first time in weeks. "I'm a financial analyst. They've been treating me like an income source. It's time to treat them like a bad investment. And what do we do with bad investments, Liam?" He smiled back, understanding immediately. "You divest, quietly and completely." "Exactly," I said. "My exit strategy won't be loud or dramatic. It'll be silent. By the time they realize their primary revenue stream has dried up, I'll be long gone." The decision not to confront my family was liberating. It shifted my focus from seeking their apology, which I knew I would never get, to planning my own future, a future that would be built on my own terms, with my own money. My silent exit strategy had one primary objective: to remove myself financially and physically from their lives before they even realized what was happening. The first step was to cut off the flow of unscheduled funds. The very next week, my mom mentioned that the dishwasher was making a funny noise and hinted that a repairman would be expensive. In the past, this would have been my cue to offer to help. This time, I just nodded sympathetically. "Oh, that's a shame. I hope you can find a good deal on a repair," I said, before turning my attention back to my laptop. The look of surprise on her face was priceless. She tried again a few days later, complaining about a high electricity bill. I simply replied, "Wow, prices are really going up everywhere," and left it at that. The Bank of C. H. Low was officially closed for all non-scheduled withdrawals. My $1,500 rent payment was next. I knew stopping it abruptly would raise immediate alarms. I needed to bide my time. My main focus became the house. The condo idea was out. I had been saving for years, and even after the $5,000 loan, I had a substantial nest egg. I started looking at the real estate market with a new, aggressive perspective. I wasn't just looking for a place to live, I was looking for a fortress of solitude. I met with a real estate agent Liam recommended, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah. In our first meeting, I laid out my financial situation. I showed her my savings, my investment portfolio, and my income. She looked over the numbers, her eyebrows raising slightly. "You're in a very strong position, Chloe," she said. "You'll be approved for a great mortgage." "I have a different idea," I replied. "I've been running the numbers. I have enough liquid assets to buy something small outright. No mortgage, no debt. What can I get for this amount in cash?" Sarah's professional demeanor broke for a second, and she looked genuinely impressed. "A cash offer. In this market, that makes you a king. It puts you at the top of the pile for any seller. We can move fast, and we can probably even get a better price." The idea of it thrilled me. A home that was entirely mine, with no bank or parent having any claim over it. It was the ultimate symbol of independence. The search was intense. I spent every evening and weekend looking at listings, and Sarah and I went to see dozens of properties. I was looking for something modest but solid. A small, two-bedroom townhouse or bungalow in a quiet, stable neighborhood across town. Far enough away to be inconvenient for surprise visits, but close enough to my job. While the house hunt was underway, I began the process of secretly moving my life out of my parents' house, one small box at a time. I started with things they would never notice: out-of-season clothes, books I had already read, old photo albums. I rented the smallest storage unit I could find and made trips there during my lunch breaks or late at night. My room began to feel less like a home and more like a temporary station. The emotional detachment was surprisingly easy. Every time I packed a box, I pictured a page from the ledger, and any flicker of guilt was immediately extinguished. 3 weeks into my search, Sarah called me, her voice buzzing with excitement. "I found it, Chloe. It's a foreclosure, a bank-owned property. It needs some cosmetic work, new paint, updated fixtures, but the bones are solid. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a small backyard. And the best part? It's listed at a price that's well under your maximum budget. With a cash offer, they'll likely accept it tomorrow." I saw the house that afternoon. It was perfect. It was a blank slate, a place with no history, no memories of betrayal. It was just a structure of wood and drywall waiting for me to make it a home. I told Sarah to make the offer that day, for the full asking price in cash with a quick closing date. The bank accepted it within 24 hours. The next 3 weeks were a blur of paperwork, inspections, and logistics, all conducted in absolute secrecy. I took personal days from work to handle the closing, telling my parents I had a demanding project. They didn't question it. They were too busy being consumed with Bella's impending departure for Europe. Her trip had become the central topic of all conversation, which provided the perfect cover for my activities. I paid my rent for the final month on the 1st, as usual. My parents accepted the money without a second thought. They had no idea it was the last payment they would ever receive from me. On the final Friday of the month, the day after my closing, I executed the final phase of my plan. I had hired a small moving company for a 2-hour window in the middle of the day when I knew my parents would be at work and Bella would be in class. The movers were efficient and professional. They cleared out my bedroom, my bed, my desk, the remaining boxes in under 90 minutes. When they were done, the room was empty. It looked sterile and strange, like a guest room that had never been used. I took one last look at the faded stars on the ceiling, then walked out and closed the door without a single shred of regret. I left my key on the kitchen counter, along with a note. It contained only 2 words: I'm out. The first week in my new house was surreal. The silence was the most noticeable thing. There was no television blaring from the living room, no sound of my mom talking on the phone, no Bella clattering around in the kitchen. It was just the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the quiet rustle of leaves outside my window. It was peace. I spent the week unpacking, painting walls, and buying furniture. For the first time, every single item in my living space was something I had chosen, something I had paid. For the feeling of ownership was intoxicating. As expected, my phone began to light up. It started on Saturday morning, the day after I moved. A text from my mom: "Chloe, your room is empty. What is going on? Call me immediately." Then came a text from my dad, more direct: "This isn't funny. Where are you?" I ignored them both. The calls started soon after. I let them all go to voicemail. I listened to one of them, my dad's voice tight with anger. "Chloe, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you have belongings here. You need to come and talk to us. Your mother is worried sick." Worried about me, I thought, or worried about next month's rent. I knew they wouldn't have a way to find me. My name wasn't on any public records for the new address yet, and I hadn't told anyone except Liam and my real estate agent. I was a ghost. My only communication with the outside world was a mass text I sent to my friends, announcing my new address and inviting them to a housewarming party the following Saturday. The party was my declaration of independence. I spent all week preparing for it. I bought decorations, planned a menu, and set up my small backyard with string lights. By Saturday evening, my little house was filled with the warmth and laughter of my chosen family, friends who had supported me, celebrated my successes, and who were genuinely happy for me. Liam was there, of course, handing me a ridiculously oversized potted plant as a gift. "For the Fortress of Solitude," he said with a grin. "Every superhero needs a plant." "Thanks, Liam," I laughed. "I couldn't have done this without you." "You did it all yourself," he corrected me. "You just finally decided to use your powers for your own good." Around 8 o'clock, as the party was in full swing, I decided it was time for the final move. I took out my phone, opened my social media app, and posted a carefully selected album of photos. The first picture was of me, standing on my new front porch, holding a set of keys with a sold sign in the background. The other photos were of the party: my friends laughing in my new living room, the toast we'd all made in the backyard, a close-up of my hands turning the key in the lock. The caption was simple: "New chapter. So grateful for this new beginning in my very own home." I tagged Liam and a few other friends in the photos and hit post. I knew it wouldn't take long. My cousin who follows me would see it. She'd tell my aunt, who would immediately call my mother. The fuse was lit. Less than an hour later, as my friends and I were cutting a cake, I heard a car screech to a halt outside. Then, furious pounding on my front door. A hush fell over the party. Liam met my eyes from across the room, a concerned look on his face. I gave him a small, reassuring nod. I had been preparing for this moment. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was them. My mother, my father, and Bella, their faces illuminated by my porch light, twisted in masks of anger and disbelief. I opened the door but stood firmly in the doorway, blocking their entry. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice calm and steady. "Can you help us?" my father sputtered, his face red. "What is this, Chloe? You pack up and leave without a word, you don't answer our calls, and then we see this on the internet." He gestured wildly at my house. My mother pushed past him. "How could you do this? How could you afford this? Where did you get the money for a house?" Her voice was shrill, a mixture of accusation and panic. This was the question they really wanted answered. Not "how are you?" but "how did our income source acquire its own assets?" "I afforded it with the money I earned at my job, Mom," I said evenly. "The money I saved by being financially disciplined. You know, the lessons you were so keen on teaching me. Bella, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up, her voice dripping with entitled disbelief. You bought a whole house, but what about us? Dad said the bills were going to be tight now that she trailed off, realizing her mistake. My father shot her a venomous look. What Bella means, he cut in, trying to recover, is that we are a family. You don't just abandon your family. You're right, I said, my voice dropping, losing its polite edge. Family doesn't abandon each other. They also don't use one of their children as a secret trust fund for the other. I saw a flicker of genuine fear in my mother's eyes. They knew I knew. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Oh, I think you do, I replied, holding their gaze. I know about the ledger, Mom. I know that my rent paid for Bella's tuition, her sorority, her car, her laptop, and her shopping sprees. I know that my $5,000 roof repair loan was used to buy her a 6-week European vacation. The color drained from their faces. Bella looked utterly stunned. My father opened his mouth to deny it, but no words came out. They were caught. So let me be perfectly clear, I continued, my voice resonating with all the years of suppressed anger. This is my house. You are not welcome here. The financial arrangement we had is over, permanently. The Bank of Chloe is closed. I started to close the door. My mother's hand shot out to stop it. Chloe, wait, please, we can talk about this. We can pay you back. The desperation in her voice was pathetic. It wasn't remorse for what she'd done. It was the terror of losing the money. No, you can't, I said, looking her dead in the eye. And you won't. Consider the debt settled. You gave me the motivation to do this. So, in a way, thank you. I pushed the door closed, turned the deadbolt, and leaned against it, my heart hammering in my chest. The pounding started again, but I ignored it. I walked back to my party, where my friends were watching me with a mixture of shock and awe. Liam came over and put a hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? He asked. I looked around at the faces of the people who truly cared about me, in the home that I had earned despite my family's deception. And for the first time in a very long time, I smiled a real, genuine smile. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm free. The aftermath of the housewarming party was a deafening silence followed by a predictable storm. For a few weeks after the confrontation on my porch, I heard nothing. It was a blissful period of peace where I settled into my new life, relishing the simple joys of making my own coffee in my own kitchen and not having to justify any of my purchases or decisions. I blocked their numbers, but I knew they were trying to reach me through other avenues. My email inbox was flooded with messages, each one a different stage of their manipulative grief. The first wave was anger. My father wrote a long, rambling email about my disrespect, my lack of gratitude, and how I had embarrassed the family. He demanded I come to my senses and apologize. I deleted it without a second thought. The second wave was guilt, orchestrated by my mother. Her emails were filled with phrases like, "You've broken my heart," and "I don't know how we'll manage," and "Bella is so upset, she can't even focus on her trip." This was a new classic, blaming me for Bella's potential inability to enjoy the very vacation I had unknowingly funded. I archived them all. The third wave, the one I knew was coming, was desperation. This one came about 2 months after I moved out. It was a joint email from both of them. The tone was completely different, conciliatory, pleading. They explained that they had made mistakes and had gotten in over their heads trying to give both their daughters the best in life. They claimed the ledger was just my mother's way of tracking things to make sure it was all even in the end. It was a weak, pathetic attempt to rewrite history. The email culminated in the real reason for their outreach. They were in financial trouble. Without my $1,500 monthly contribution and my willingness to cover their emergencies, their carefully constructed financial house of cards was collapsing. They had taken out a second mortgage on their house years ago to cover some of Bella's earlier expenses, and they were struggling to make the payments. They asked if I could find it in my heart to help them, just until they could get back on their feet. They were not asking for a daughter, they were applying for a bailout. I typed out a 1-sentence reply. I suggest you consult a financial advisor to explore your options. I hit send, and then created a filter to send all future emails from their addresses directly to the trash. The consequences of their actions began to ripple through the family. Bella had to come home early from her Europe trip. Apparently, without the bank of Chloe to top up her funds, she ran out of money halfway through. She had to call my parents for a humiliating wire transfer to afford a flight home. I heard from a cousin that Bella was now working part-time as a waitress to pay for her own car insurance and phone bill. The real world, it turned out, was not as fun as she had been led to believe. My parents had to make drastic lifestyle changes. They sold my father's expensive truck for a more modest, used car. My mother had to take on extra hours at her job. The lavish Christmases and birthday gifts they were known for were a thing of the past. They were finally living within their actual means, not the inflated budget my income had provided them. I saw them once, months later, at a grocery store. We made eye contact across the produce aisle. They looked older, more tired. My mother gave a hesitant, hopeful little wave. I simply gave a polite, neutral nod and continued with my shopping. There was no anger left, just a sense of closure. They were strangers to me now, connected only by blood and bad memories. My life, in contrast, was thriving. My home became my sanctuary. Liam and I started spending more and more time together. Our deep friendship slowly and naturally blossoming into something more. He helped me plant a garden in my backyard, and we'd spend our Sundays cooking and laughing in the kitchen that was all mine. He celebrated my promotion at work and encouraged me to start seriously investing the money I was now saving at an incredible rate. He saw me for who I was, not for what I could provide. One evening, about a year after I had moved out, Liam and I were sitting on my back porch, watching the sunset. I felt a profound sense of peace. The rage and betrayal that had once consumed me had faded, leaving behind a quiet strength I never knew I possessed. "Do you ever regret it?" Liam asked softly. "Cutting them off so completely?" I thought about it for a moment, swirling the ice in my glass. I thought about the ledger, the lies, and the years of feeling like I was running in place. Then I looked around at the small, beautiful life I had built. "No," I said, and the certainty in my voice was absolute. "I don't regret leaving. My only regret is that I didn't do it sooner." They had intended to teach me a lesson about financial discipline, and in the end, they had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. I had learned to identify a bad investment, to cut my losses, and to reinvest in something with guaranteed returns, myself. And the dividends were priceless.